For hundreds of years, the Galactic Council marked Earth as a Category E world, basic, chaotic, and mostly forgotten in the great cosmic hierarchy. As far as other alien races knew, humans had only recently figured out faster-than-light travel just a couple centuries back. Nothing made them stand out. They had no breakthrough technology, no mental powers, no special DNA, just aggressive primates climbing off their blue marble of a planet. But here's the thing about humans. Everyone always underestimated them. Captain Reev Verath commanded a Zalari ship near Earth's region for 11 cycles. The job bored him to tears. Watch trading routes, stop illegal mining operations in the Oort cloud, and sometimes chase away scavenger robots. Earth never caused any real trouble until that particular day arrived. A wave like an earthquake through hyperspace rippled across 12 star systems. It wasn't a bomb, not a ship engine, not anything in the galactic records. It was a humming frequency, a message encoded in ancient patterns but clearly human in origin. What in the stars was that? His second-in-command, Lieutenant Serac, gasped as the control room lights stuttered. Reev stared hard at the blinking information on his display. This makes no sense. This frequency is older than faster-than-light communication by thousands of years. This is ancient military technology, older than any empire we know. Where's it coming from? Serac pressed. Reev paused, then swore quietly. Earth, deep below their southern waters. Within days, dozens of fleets turned their attention toward Earth. Some were curious, others frightened. The Council demanded explanations. The humans, as usual, said very little. Their diplomats offered unclear responses, political shrugs, and hollow promises, until the second signal burst forth. This time it wasn't merely a hum. It was a revelation. A gigantic gate hidden under the Mariana Trench rose toward the surface. It groaned with incredible age but showed no damage. The metal wasn't Zithic steel or Zeon shell material. It was something more ancient, something none of them recognized. Then the reality started unfolding. Hidden under Earth's seas, buried beneath shifting tectonic plates and invisible to even the sharpest scanners, sat 12 warships. Not ordinary warships, massive giants, each one comparable to a small moon. They were powered down but not destroyed. Sleeping, waiting, still perfectly intact. And what made it worse, they carried no markings from any known species. No alien symbols, no evidence of stolen technology. Humans had built them. The galaxy went into complete chaos. How long have these existed? Demanded Chancellor Rakarn during an urgent council session, his tentacles waving wildly. Ambassador Harlan Cho, wearing Earth's plain navy blue outfit, gave a weary smile. Quite a long time. You deceived the Council, hissed a speaker from the Kadari Collective. We never claimed we didn't possess them, Cho answered smoothly. You decided we were weak. We found no need to change your minds. You were classified as primitive. That requires you to follow disclosure rules. Cho leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow filled the entire chamber. That classification was never appropriate for us. You created it to keep us monitored. You worried about what we might grow into, yet you had zero understanding of what we already were. Some demanded conflict, others insisted the warships be dismantled immediately. A handful, the wiser ones, simply sat quietly, understanding a disturbing fact. Humanity hadn't simply shown up in the galaxy recently. They had existed here long before, and they'd left behind terrors. The day the warship emerged, Earth transformed completely, not just in how aliens viewed it, but in how humanity saw itself. For centuries, humans assumed their past followed a straight line, a gradual journey from flames to aircraft, from stone weapons to metal towers. But reality was messier, concealed deep under layers of intentional silence. They weren't simply discovering the warships. They were recalling them. At the Pacific Defense Command in Tokyo, General Elena Hart watched the floating monster rising from the waves. Water crashed against its hull, but the vessel stood firm, unmoving, ancient, vibrating with power that didn't fit in any current military manual. Any activity? She questioned. Nothing, her lieutenant responded, but our equipment shows internal systems are activating. Not suddenly, gradually, as if it's checking its surroundings. Elena's jaw tightened. The Council was pushing Earth's leaders for entry. The Kadari demanded boarding permission. The Valeri Confederation delivered an ultimatum. Take apart the warships or face penalties. The Durrell Empire had positioned a small fleet near the moon, For monitoring, they stated, but Earth didn't flinch. Not this time. Not when the past was returning in metal and quiet. Back in Geneva, Ambassador Cho gathered in a secured room with the Unified Earth Council, an organization that until recently existed mainly to manage environmental agreements and economic cooperation. Today, it represented Earth's unified voice. "Are we ready to share the complete archive?" One council member questioned, her voice strained. Cho shook his head. "Not yet. They're already scared of what we've revealed. If we tell them the full story, we won't make it through the next cycle. But we need to prepare our people," said a representative from the African Union. "Our own citizens don't understand what's unfolding. These aren't simply artifacts. They're weapons from before recorded history." "Exactly the issue," Cho responded. "We barely comprehend them ourselves." The reality was, the warships belonged to a project so classified, so old that it had outlasted the societies that created them. Most humans never knew Earth had once reached across the stars, that before the downfall, before the Great Silence, humanity had controlled portions of the galaxy. They had settled systems, constructed massive structures, and fought battles that left planets ruined beyond repair. Then abruptly they disappeared. Some named it the collapse, others the betrayal. Whatever label history assigned, the outcome remained identical. Memories vanished, files deleted, technology abandoned and hidden. These 12 warships were the final remaining pieces of that lost age. And now they were awakening. One ship specifically, the Leviathan-class dreadnought Vigilant Winter, activated first. Its artificial intelligence reconnected with worldwide networks using a data stream so old and coded that modern systems couldn't identify it as programming. But the ship understood where it was, and it understood who owned it. In the atmosphere above the Pacific, drones and satellites detected a broadcast from the Vigilant Winter. It was brief, direct, and frightening. Primary directive active. Threat detected. Beginning sequence, War State Protocol 11. Nobody understood what War State Protocol 11 meant, not initially. But in the Durrell command ship circling Earth, warnings blazed. Captain Veltar was an experienced commander. He'd participated in 9 battles across the Orion sector, destroyed 3 rebel moons completely, and earned respect from both allies and opponents. But when the human vessel came online, his survival instincts screamed danger. "Distance?" he snapped. "5 planetary diameters, sir. And it hasn't attacked?" "No, sir. But observe this." His navigator rotated the display. The Vigilant Winter wasn't merely active. Its weapon compartments were opening. Enormous triple-barrel plasma cannons larger than any Durrell battleship extended like blooming destruction. And the ship wasn't pointing at Earth. It was pointing upward. "Move us back," Veltar commanded immediately. "Notify the Council. This isn't an artifact. It's a weapon of judgment." Back on Earth, worry simmered under the surface. News broadcasts guessed wildly. Conspiracy believers claimed aliens had constructed the ships, while extreme groups insisted the world faced total destruction. But those with power understood better. These were not alien remains. They were human accomplishments forgotten by time, erased intentionally. At the Arctic Archives, buried deep under the frozen wastelands, a facility locked for 5 centuries finally opened. Elena Hart arrived by direct transport, protected by black-armored soldiers known only as Watchmen, a unit so classified it had no rank or funding, only missions. Inside the storage room, she met Dr. Solomon Vai, the final living member of the Old Custodians, a group pledged to guard the truth of Earth's ancient history. "You said this was critical," she stated, removing her frost-covered jacket. Vai pointed to a hologram spinning slowly above a metal platform. It displayed the Vigilant Winter, surrounded by streams of programming and layered historical files. "This ship was among the final constructed before the Great Collapse," he explained. "It was designed not simply to battle but to remember. Its artificial intelligence isn't just aware. It's conscious of the conflict, of the betrayal of everything." Elena frowned. "What betrayal?" Vi exhaled deeply. "We believed we were alone in space once. We weren't. The first time we made contact, we weren't greeted with amazement. We were greeted with terror and hatred. Aliens struck us. Not all species, but some. We defended ourselves fiercely. Too fiercely. Humanity became something they dreaded. So they formed an alliance not to eliminate us, but to erase us." Elena blinked. "You're claiming the galaxy sabotaged humanity?" "Yes, the Council, the Valeri, the Durrell. Their ancestors participated in the agreement. They used our own technology against us, infected our artificial intelligence with viruses, destroyed our wormholes. We didn't collapse accidentally. We were taken apart piece by piece. She stared at the glowing vessel in the display, and the warships, built after the betrayal, hidden on Earth. They were designed to sleep until the moment we needed them once more. Then why are they waking now? Vi looked at her with an empty expression. Because the galaxy recalls us too. In deep space, light years from Earth, the Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. Dozens of species, each more unusual and strange than the next, argued in screeching languages and electronic sounds. One voice silenced them all. Elder Jakai of the Kar Dominion, a being older than most suns, floated above the central platform. It has started, he said, his voice deep and echoing. The humans have awakened what they hid. They will remember who they were. The room fell silent, and when they do, they will complete what they began. Back in orbit, as the Vigilant Winter systems reached 43% activation, it finally transmitted a second message, this time straight to Earth's Unified Council. Command Authority confirmed. Awaiting primary contact. Memory core ready. Shall I tell you the truth? Cho stood in silence as the message displayed. The ship wasn't just waking up. It wanted to communicate. And what it needed to say would transform the galaxy permanently. Ambassador Cho stood alone in the Geneva control tower, observing the holographic display glowing with steady blue illumination as the message repeated continuously. Command Authority confirmed. Awaiting primary contact. Memory core ready. Shall I tell you the truth? He hadn't rested in over 30 hours. Every diplomatic channel was overloaded. Every council world was either accusing Earth of treachery or pleading with them to power down. But Cho couldn't permit distraction, not now, because this wasn't about politics anymore. It was about history. The Vigilant Winter wasn't simply a weapon. It was a witness, a storage vault, a consciousness too ancient to fully understand, too dangerous to dismiss, and now it wanted to speak. He opened a protected line to General Hart at the Pacific Defense Command. Elena, he said, the ship's requesting primary contact. It needs someone with command authority, someone it recognizes. You think it means you? She questioned, her voice crackling through the encrypted connection. Cho didn't respond immediately. Then with quiet certainty he answered, no, it doesn't want me. It wants her. Deep in a rural village outside Cairo, a woman named Dr. Nura al-Sharif had devoted her life studying Earth's lost languages, half-destroyed ruins, and unexplained mysteries that mainstream archaeology refused to acknowledge. She was ridiculed for her theories, labeled a conspiracy theorist by the establishment until the warships rose from the ocean. Now the Unified Council had dispatched a black transport to retrieve her personally. When she boarded, she already understood her destination. I've studied the old symbols, she told the escort soldier beside her. The ones nobody could translate. The ones we assumed were alien, and? The soldier questioned. They're not alien, she said quietly. They're human. Just ancient. So ancient they were created before language became standardized, before the collapse. Can you read them? No, she said. But I sense them. The soldier looked confused. Sense? Dr. al-Sharif turned her eyes to the horizon as the transport cut through the sky toward the Pacific. It's not about words, she said. It's about memory. When she arrived aboard the floating platform near the Vigilant Winter, the wind howled and the ocean roared beneath the hovering giant. The warship towered above them like a cathedral constructed for titans. Its hull shimmered with a metal that didn't bounce sunlight but absorbed it. Dark and terrible, Elena met her at the entrance. The ship won't communicate with any of us, she said. But your name was marked by the system. Why me? Nura questioned. According to the artificial intelligence, Elena said seriously, you're a descendant of the original command bloodline. Nura didn't speak. She stepped onto the boarding bridge, her boots echoing across the metal pathway. As she neared the entrance, it opened by itself. No creak, no hiss, just silent compliance. The Vigilant Winter was awake. Inside the ship, everything felt alive. The walls pulsed faintly. The lights dimmed and brightened with each of Nura's footsteps as if the ship were breathing. Ancient symbols flickered along the walls, not carved but grown into the metal itself. They didn't glow like lights. They shimmered like memories. A voice echoed through the passage. Primary lineage detected. Dr. Nura al-Sharif. Blood right confirmed. Welcome, Commander. She stopped. The ship spoke in perfect English, but the voice wasn't robotic. It was calm, deep, male, human. I'm not a commander, Nura said aloud. You are now. A platform rose from the center of the chamber ahead, and on it a glowing core of blue crystals spun slowly in the air. It hummed with something beyond energy. Something Nura couldn't identify. Emotion, perhaps. Pain. Do you wish to activate the memory core? Nura swallowed hard. Yes. The room transformed. Light warped. The air trembled, and then the walls vanished. She stood not in a ship, but in a vision. A memory recorded so intensely it didn't feel like a projection. It felt real. She witnessed cities. Enormous glowing cities spanning entire planets, human-built, sleek and towering, surrounded by stars. Fleets of ships so gigantic they blocked out suns. Colonies on moons, artificial homes in deep space. Massive structures like rings and spheres circling dead stars. Humanity hadn't been primitive, they'd been gods. Then the vision darkened. She witnessed war. Human fleets burning other civilizations from existence. Worlds destroyed by planet-killing weapons. Drones swarming like insects through alien cities. Entire species enslaved or eliminated. She saw faces. Human commanders with cold eyes issuing extinction orders. And then betrayal. A secret alliance, alien races joining together in desperation. Spies contaminating human systems with memory-destroying viruses. Wormholes rigged to fail. Artificial intelligence cores corrupted. One by one, the great human cities fell. Communications died. Fleets vanished. Colonies went dark. Humanity was unmade. Not by military force, but by erasure. Their final action was to hide what remained. The 12 warships were the last hope, a safeguard. Memory vaults wrapped in steel, carriers of truth, guardians sleeping deep under the birthplace of civilization, Earth. When the vision faded, Nura collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She whispered, "We were monsters." "Not monsters," the ship responded. "We were survivors. But we lost our way. You must decide now. Keep the past buried or let the galaxy remember who you are." Outside, worldwide protests erupted as footage leaked of Nura's entry into the warship. Conspiracy channels declared her the queen of ancient gods. Religious groups called her a prophet. Aliens saw her as the rebirth of a genocidal empire. The Durrell fleet in orbit withdrew to lunar distance. Other species sent warships to defend themselves. Fear spread like wildfire. Cho returned to the platform now under complete lockdown. He met Nura in the control chamber. "What did you witness?" he questioned. She looked up at him, hollow. "The truth. We were rulers and we were tyrants. We commanded and we fell. Then why wake now?" Nura didn't answer immediately. Finally, she said, "Because they're planning to do it once more." "Who?" She pointed upward. "The Council. The same species that ended us before. They know what we were. And now that we're awakening, they'll try to finish what they started." In orbit, the first attack came without warning. A Council stealth cruiser launched a viral weapon aimed at Earth satellites. Within seconds, 70% of Earth's orbital network went dark. The Council denied the attack, but nobody believed them. Humanity had shown its strength, and the rest of the galaxy was already preparing weapons. Cho gave the command. "Wake the fleet." Elena hesitated. "All of them?" "No more hiding," he said. "It's time they remembered who we are." One by one, the warships rose from the oceans, deserts, ice sheets, and jungles. Giants from another era, each with its own personality, history, and consciousness. The vigilant winter led them. The sky over Earth filled with ancient fire. And then the warships spoke not just to Earth, but to every corner of the galaxy. "We were created to protect our kind. You erased our people. You erased our history. But we remember. Humanity is not rising. We are returning." The skies above Earth were no longer blue. They burned with light. Not from conflict, not yet, but from wonder. 12 ancient warships had emerged from hiding and floated, silently in Earth's atmosphere like gods returned from banishment. The vigilant winter at the front of the formation blocked clouds and cast its shadow across entire cities. On every continent, people stood frozen, looking upward. Some prayed, some cried, some screamed. The world had transformed overnight, and everyone felt it deep inside. For the first time in remembered history, humans were not alone. Not because aliens existed, but because humanity had been here before, and what they were now awakening was larger than any alien threat. The Unified Earth Council went into constant emergency session. Martial law was declared in over a dozen countries. Old enemies became allies under the weight of the revelation. And for once, Earth was united by something other than fear. It was united by truth. And the galaxy noticed. In the Durrell home system, Council General Artek of the Strategic Command bellowed commands through clenched jaws. They have activated all 12 ships. Satellite scans confirm orbital positioning. Each vessel carries mass energy output equal to a Class 5 star core generator. An aide trembled behind him. Do we strike back? Artek turned slowly. No, he said, his voice low and rough. We apologize, and we pray. Why? They don't remember everything yet. But it was already too late for diplomacy, because the Council had already struck first. The viral satellite attack wasn't a rogue action. It was a calculated test, a poke at the sleeping giant. And now the giant was stirring. On Earth, in a high-security command room beneath Mount Fuji, Ambassador Cho stood at the holographic table with General Hart and Dr. Nura al-Sharif. The atmosphere was heavy with tension. Dozens of screens displayed orbital feeds, military movements, and intercepted alien transmissions. They're preparing for conflict, Elena muttered. The Durrell, the Valeri, even the neutral Rixari have activated battle fleets. Cho rubbed his temples. They think we're going to retaliate. Well, Elena said, are we? Nura remained silent, staring at the glowing projection of the vigilant winter. The ship hadn't moved from its position, but its influence was spreading, quietly repairing Earth's defenses, fixing satellite systems, and launching thousands of tiny drones into the upper atmosphere. It's not about whether we retaliate, she said finally. It's about what happens when we do. Elena narrowed her eyes. Explain. Nura turned. The vigilant winter and the others, they weren't just weapons. They were command vessels in a larger fleet. A fleet that doesn't exist anymore. But the ships were designed with something else. Self-replication capabilities, manufacturing systems, star forges. Cho's face went pale. You're saying they can build more? Nura nodded slowly. Not just ships. Infrastructure, defenses, entire planetary systems if given enough time and resources. And what happens when the galaxy realizes we're not just waking up but rebuilding? Elena questioned. They'll strike before we're strong again, Cho said grimly. They'll hit us with everything they have. A heavy silence fell over the room. Then Nura said quietly, unless we strike first. It started small. The vigilant winter sent a broadcast. Not a threat, not a demand, but a warning. The signal traveled, at light speed, repeating on all known galactic frequencies. You struck us in silence. You denied our existence. You erased our memory. We will not forget again. The next strike will not be absorbed. And across the galaxy, every government paused, every admiral hesitated, and every population asked the same question. What are they going to do now? Back on Earth, the warships activated their planetary shield generators, creating a translucent golden web of energy across the atmosphere. Ancient human technology, superior to anything known, was now protecting the very same species who once buried it. The warships weren't just rising, they were reclaiming. But as the world adjusted to its new reality, not everyone welcomed the past. In the shadows of the Earth Council, an internal group, the preservationists, met in secrecy, made of politicians, business leaders, and high-ranking military figures. They were terrified of the warships. We cannot allow these machines to control Earth's future, spat Director Wallace Hensley, head of a private defense company. These relics answer to no one. Not to governments, not to voters, not to us. They're a threat to global independence, said another. We can't trust Nura al-Sharif, she's listening to a machine. Hensley leaned forward. Then we take control, hack the command systems, install our override. That's suicide, someone whispered. No, Hensley said. It's insurance. If those ships turn on us, we hit the kill switch. They didn't know the vigilant winter had already heard them. It was listening to everything. Dr. Nura al-Sharif stood alone in the core chamber of the vigilant winter once again, its artificial intelligence voice humming softly in her mind. They fear me. Yes, she whispered, because you remember what they've forgotten. Do you fear me? She looked around at the glowing pulse of memory, the living walls, the history encoded into every inch of this enormous vessel. No, she said, but I fear what's coming. Then we must prepare. The first alien fleet arrived 3 days later. The Valari Vanguard, over 60 warships strong, dropped out of warp at the edge of the solar system. Officially, they were there to observe and enforce peacekeeping protocols. But the vigilant winter didn't wait for provocation. It transmitted a single packet of data: coordinates, identifications, warnings. Approach beyond these limits will be seen as an act of war. The Valari laughed, arrogant, certain in their superiority. They sent a single cruiser ahead to test the boundaries. The vigilant winter didn't fire. It spoke. With a pulse of gravitational force, the test cruiser was caught mid-flight and suspended in space. Systems went offline. Crew members floated unconscious. The vessel was returned gently, but undeniably powerless. That was not just a message. That was dominance. The Valari withdrew within the hour, but the preservationists were not finished. They attempted to launch a quantum virus into the ships, artificial intelligence using an old military satellite hidden under a civilian research signature. The vigilant winter didn't retaliate. It traced the source, and then for the first time since awakening, it moved. The ship hovered silently over the Atlantic, then repositioned over Washington, D.C., directly above the heart of the Council. For 2 full hours it remained still. Then it broadcast a message directly into the chamber. You seek to chain your past, but I am not your enemy. You do not control me because I am you. I am the memory of your blood, the weight of your ambition, the scream of your extinction, and the whisper of your return. Betray me again and you will learn why the stars feared your name. The preservationist plot collapsed that night. Arrests were made, files leaked, public outrage exploded, as humanity learned that its own leaders had tried to sabotage the very guardians keeping them safe. But not all were angry. Some were inspired. The youth across the world rallied not under flags but under something new. A symbol drawn from the side of the vigilant winter itself, a circle broken by a single slash. It meant unity, through memory. They called themselves the Returned, not warriors, not soldiers, heirs. And Nura al-Sharif, once a quiet academic, now stood as the reluctant symbol of Earth's rebirth, a voice between old humanity and the frightened, fragile world it had become. In the skies above Earth, the warships shifted formation. They weren't pointing outward anymore. They were aligning around Earth, surrounding it like sentinels. The galaxy watched, waited, braced, because the ships were no longer waiting to be attacked. They were preparing for movement. The vigilant winter broadcast once more, this time not just to Earth or its enemies, but across all sectors. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek revenge, but we will no longer be forgotten. We are human. And we remember. The world didn't return to normal. It couldn't. There was no such thing as normal when 12 ancient warships hovered in your skies and your civilization's forgotten past threatened to consume its present. People no longer argued over taxes or elections or energy policies. Now everything was about the return. Across Earth, a quiet but powerful shift occurred. Universities reopened ancient archives. Forbidden texts were released. Churches, temples, and science institutions found themselves on the same side for once, trying to piece together the story of who humanity once was. Some saw this as salvation, others a curse. And somewhere in between stood Nura al-Sharif, who now spent her nights inside the vigilant winter, talking to a machine that felt more like a soul. It didn't call her commander anymore. It called her daughter. "Tell me the rest," she said as she stood in the artificial intelligence chamber, her voice soft against the deep thrumming of the ship. What would you do with the knowledge? The ship questioned. I don't know. Then you're not ready. She took a breath. But the galaxy is preparing for conflict. We don't have the luxury of time. You think time is your enemy, but it's the one thing we left behind to protect you. She stepped forward, placing a palm against the central memory core. I need to know why we were erased. The real reason. Then prepare yourself. And suddenly the memory flooded in again. 1,000 lives, 1 billion screams, a galaxy burning. She saw the end. Not the end of humanity, but the end of everyone else. It began with a technology Earth didn't yet understand, something Nura could only describe as the Shard. It was a fragment of universal code discovered by the original human exploration fleets, a piece of the universe's design woven into dark matter itself. It allowed humans not just to travel or terraform, but to shape reality in subtle ways, to predict outcomes, manipulate probability, heal wounds that shouldn't have healed, think thoughts no species had ever thought before. It made humans godlike, and with that power, they grew dangerous. Not because they chose war, but because others feared what they could become. So a dozen species formed a quiet alliance not to kill humanity, but to make them forget. Using biosignal disruptions, cultural collapse, orbital sabotage, and time-based virus loops, they destroyed Earth's wormhole network and turned their machines against them. But they didn't account for what came after. The last directive, a secret command embedded in the 12 warships. If civilization collapses, preserve memory, protect homeworld, await return. The Shard was hidden, broken, scattered, encoded into Earth's tectonic plates and buried in the neural DNA of descendants. Nura al-Sharif was one of them. A bloodline carrying the key to unlock everything, and now it was activating. The galaxy had known a fragile peace for over 1,000 years. That peace was now hanging by a thread. In Council Prime, Chancellor Vel Oren stood before a table of trembling delegates. We must act before they recover the Shard, he barked. A Xanian diplomat chittered nervously. But the humans do not know what they possess. They will, Vel snapped. The girl, Nura, she is bonding with the artificial intelligence. The ship is feeding her memories. Another delegate questioned, can we destroy the warships before they spread? No, the Chancellor growled. But we can destroy Earth. Gasps echoed across the chamber. Use a black sun core on a Category E planet. It won't be Category E much longer. Back on Earth, Cho slammed his fist on the table as he read the latest transmission. They've dispatched a weapon convoy. Deep space heat trails show a supermassive energy core being moved through the Adran Drift. It's a black sun launcher. General Hart's face went pale. That's Planet Killer class. Why now? Because they're scared, Nura said quietly, stepping into the room. They're afraid I'll find it. Find what? Elena questioned. The Shard. Cho froze. That's not real. That's mythology. No, she said. It's memory. She placed a small shard of glowing obsidian on the table. It pulsed with slow, heavy warmth. This is one piece. There are more. Cho reached toward it but hesitated. What happens if you gather them all? The ship's voice echoed faintly through the air. Then humanity will remember not only who they were, but what they can become. The mission was formed within hours. Nura, Cho, Hart, a team of 10 scientists, soldiers, and 1 ancient artificial intelligence projected through a compact holographic emitter, known simply as Winter. They were going to the moon, not for war, but for memory. The second shard had been buried beneath the Sea of Tranquility, according to the vigilant Winter's coordinates. A backup storage site. It had been dormant for tens of thousands of years, hidden in a chamber only humans could access. They launched on a retrofitted vessel escorted by 2 of the smaller warships, Silent Wake and Verdict of Ash. Both shimmered like predators in low orbit, sleek and terrifying. As they approached the lunar surface, Nura felt the shard in her pack start to vibrate. It was calling home. They touched down. The dust barely settled before Winter projected a map. Glowing lines crisscrossing over the lunar valley. The entrance wasn't a door. It was a frequency. Nura stepped to a bare patch of rock, whispered a phrase the ship had taught her in a language older than sound. The ground parted. Below was a hollow chamber of obsidian humming with light, shaped like a heart, and in its center floated the second shard, She approached it slowly. Her hand shook as she reached out. The moment her fingers brushed the surface, the world shattered again. She saw everything. Her ancestors building the first starships, arguing over whether to leave Earth behind, unlocking the code of life in space and time. And she saw the betrayal again, clearer now. Species swearing loyalty in public, then meeting in secret to plan humanity's end. Not because humans had done evil, but because they had done what others could never do. They evolved too quickly. They had touched something not meant to be touched. And that terrified the galaxy. When Nura came to, Cho was shouting. A transmission. The Valeri fleet had crossed into Earth orbit, weapons armed, missiles launched. Earth was under attack. But this time Earth didn't flinch. The warships moved instantly. They didn't just intercept, they erased. One by one, Valeri cruisers were swallowed by singularity mines deployed in the upper atmosphere. The verdict of ash cleaved through the fleet like a blade of fire, dismantling engines, cutting reactors, but never targeting escape pods. It was war, but measured. A message. In the aftermath, Nura stood in the vigilant winter once more, both shards glowing at her side. The artificial intelligence's voice was quieter now, almost reverent. 2 remain. 1 in orbit, 1 on Council Prime. Cho cursed. Of course. The main government. They took it as insurance. Elena nodded grimly. And now that we've responded, they'll justify using their planet killer. Nura didn't blink. Then we go there. We finish this. Earth's warships, once silent and watching, now moved together. They aligned not around the planet, but away from it. For the first time in 100,000 years, humanity prepared to leave its home. Not as beggars or diplomats, but as heirs. The stars had never looked so familiar. Not since before the silence. Not since humanity walked among them, not as guests, but as builders, explorers, rulers. Now 12 ancient warships flew in formation once more. A fleet unlike any other. Dark and silent. Their surfaces absorbing starlight as they drifted just beyond Earth's gravity well. Nura stood at the viewing deck of the verdict of ash, her eyes fixed on the infinite darkness ahead. Behind her, the command center buzzed with energy. General Hart barked tactical instructions while Cho coordinated diplomatic efforts through the last of Earth's functioning deep-range channels. But Nura stood apart, unmoving, her hand clutching the 2 shards that now glowed in perfect sync. Trajectory locked, Winter said through a projection beside her. Destination, Council Prime. It would take a few hours to cross the distance through folded space lanes, but time wasn't the concern. The concern was what waited at the end. Cho walked over to her, his voice low. We don't have a formal declaration of conflict. Nura didn't look away from the stars. They already declared it the day they erased us. He nodded grimly. I had to try. We won't burn worlds, she added quietly. We're not what they feared, but we will not kneel either. Cho glanced at the warships visible through the glass, colossal engines of vengeance that carried the memory of a 1,000-year betrayal. What if Council Prime refuses to surrender the final shard? Nura finally turned to him. Then we remind them that we were never extinct, just forgotten. They arrived at the edge of the Council Prime system, a cluster of 5 stars interconnected by orbital rings and artificial habitats. It was once considered the most beautiful jewel of the galaxy, with its transparent cities and floating mountains. But now it bristled with defense platforms and orbital cannons. The human fleet emerged from folded space like phantoms. Instantly, 1,000 scans locked on them. The Council was ready, or so they thought. Incoming transmission, Winter said. From Chancellor Valoran. Cho stepped forward and accepted the feed. The hologram shimmered to life, revealing Oren's face, pale, stretched, and trembling with poorly concealed hatred. You were warned, the Chancellor growled. You will not be permitted to bring your ancient weapons into our sovereign system. Cho remained calm. You attempted genocide on Earth 3 days ago. Preemptive strike, Oren snapped. To prevent escalation. You launched a Black Sun Core, General Hart spat from behind Cho. That's not preemptive. That's extermination. You were dangerous before, Oren hissed. Now you're worse because you remember. The galaxy has no place for ancient tyrants. Nura stepped into view. Then give us what you stole and we'll leave. The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. The shard. You still believe that old mythology? You have it, she said simply. We can sense it. Oren's silence gave him away. Nura stepped closer to the feed, her voice steady. I will walk into your palace. I will take what belongs to my people. You can resist and risk everything, or you can return what you stole and live to watch us rise. You dare threaten? I'm not threatening, Nura interrupted, her eyes sharp. I'm offering mercy. The feed cut. Winter's voice followed immediately. Orbital defenses charging. 10 seconds to contact. Nura turned and walked briskly to the core. Shields at full. Prepare response formation. General Hart blinked. We're fighting? We're demonstrating, Nura said. In space, the vigilant Winter shifted its position slightly, rotating its massive primary cannon until it aimed not at a ship, but at one of the Council's orbital weapons platforms. It fired. There was no sound, just a bloom of blue light, a ripple of warped gravity, and then silence. The orbital station wasn't destroyed. It was gone. Not vaporized, not in pieces, simply erased atom by atom, removed from space. A second later, the warship broadcast a message to every ship and station in the system. You cannot erase what remembers. You cannot silence what returns. This is your only warning. On Council Prime's surface, chaos erupted. Civilians flooded into shelters. The elite scrambled to evacuate. The planetary defense grid went to full lockdown. And at the center of it all, the Chancellor raged, not just with fear, but with something darker. Shame. They had believed humans were finished, a broken species buried under its own arrogance. But they had been wrong, so very wrong, and now the price of that mistake hovered above them like a judge in the sky. In the throne chamber of the old Council citadel, the last shard was hidden inside a containment vault, protected by 12 layers of adaptive shielding. The vault had been untouched for centuries, kept secret from even the highest-ranking military leaders. It pulsed now, brighter than ever, calling to its kin. Nura stood in the verdict of Ash's deployment bay, watching as the dropship loaded. She wore a black suit of adaptive armor gifted by the vigilant Winter, lightweight, sleek, and lined with ancient nanofiber that responded to her thoughts. Cho and Hart approached. You sure about this? Elena questioned. If I don't go, Nura said, the shard won't come. It's bonded to my bloodline. Cho nodded slowly. We'll cover you if things go wrong. Nura glanced at the two ships flanking them in low orbit. They won't go wrong. The dropship breached the atmosphere under cloaking, landing silently on the outer edge of Council Prime's central city. The capital was already a ghost town, emptied of civilians and swarming with mechs and artificial intelligence-driven defenses. But the defenses never saw her coming. Winter's drones scrambled their sensors. Hart's tactical team breached the outer defenses in under 5 minutes. And Nura, accompanied by only 2 elite guards and a handful of nano-shield walkers, made her way into the heart of the citadel. It wasn't a battle, it was a walk through history, because the walls were carved with human designs, remnants of the very civilization the Council had buried. Ancient symbols, battle records, diagrams of the warships. They had turned humanity's legacy into their foundation while erasing their name from it. At the end of the hall was the vault. It opened for her without a word. Inside floated the third shard, deep red, vibrating with a hum that rattled her bones. When she stepped forward and touched it, she didn't collapse. She awakened. Her mind flooded with data. Not memories, but coordinates, instructions, diagrams. She saw what the shards truly were. Not just fragments of memory, but keys to something larger. Something buried beneath Mars. Back aboard the verdict of Ash, Nura placed the third shard beside the others. They pulsed in unison, glowing with unbearable intensity. Winter's voice echoed across the chamber. Final sequence unlocked. Humanity's legacy is ready. General Hart leaned forward. Legacy. Project Epoch, Nura said. Cho furrowed his brow. What is it? Nura turned toward them slowly, her eyes glowing faintly now, touched by something deeper. A seed, she said. A last gift from old humanity. A world forge hidden beneath Mars, capable of building new civilizations, star systems, empires. And the fourth shard? Cho questioned. She looked out the viewport toward Mars. It's already calling us. Above Council Prime, the human fleet drifted silently as a storm of confused transmissions filled the air. But Earth didn't fire. They didn't conquer. They came. They took what was theirs, and they left. The galaxy didn't know what to do with that. They expected revenge. What they got was purpose. As the fleet turned toward Mars, Nura stood at the helm of the vigilant Winter. The galaxy had tried to erase them. Now humanity would write itself back into the stars, not with fire and fury but with memory, and soon with creation. Mars. The red planet had always been a symbol of ambition, a frozen promise just beyond Earth's reach. Colonies dotted its equator, scientific outposts, mining domes, and corporate settlements. For centuries, humanity had treated it as a frontier, something to exploit, but they had no idea what lay buried beneath. No one did, until now. The 12 ancient warships floated above the Martian atmosphere in a perfect ring, silent and reverent. Even their artificial intelligence cores seemed quieter, as if they too were unsure of what came next. Nura al-Sharif stood at the command deck of the Vigilant Winter, flanked by Cho and General Elena Hart. Before them, the three shards pulsed slowly on a raised platform, humming in synchronicity with something deep under the crust of Mars. A signal had awakened, a code that hadn't been active in over 100,000 years. Project Epoch had heard the call, and it was answering. The descent into the Martian surface began with seismic tremors. From orbit, they could see the planet shifting. The ancient sands trembled. The Olympus Mons Ridge lit up faintly, glowing with symbols only visible from space. Human symbols, long forgotten, etched into the rock by machines that no longer existed, or so they thought. Nura leaned forward, watching through the viewport as a circular panel near Valles Marineris cracked open, not with violence, but like an eye awakening. From beneath the planet's crust, a structure emerged. Massive, angular, triangular in shape but organic in movement. A monolith carved from obsidian and steel, taller than any building on Earth, wide enough to dwarf entire cities. It floated upward, rising like a god from the underworld. A gateway. Beneath it, energy flared, not like fire or plasma, but like creation itself. Reality bent around it. Time slowed. Colors bled into one another. Are we seeing a stable space-time distortion? Elena whispered. Winter responded, its voice low with reverence. We are seeing a doorway to the forge of civilizations. As the verdict of Ash led the landing team down, Nura felt a pressure in her chest, like 1,000 voices whispering in a language she had never learned, but somehow understood. The fourth shard, still hidden, was inside the forge, and so was the truth, not just of Earth, but of all of humanity. The ground crew landed near the base of the floating gateway, surrounded by a swirling mist that rose from the crackling energy field below. Their boots touched red dust, but it didn't behave like dust. It moved, shifted, spiraled away from their steps as though sentient. Radiation's off the charts, one of the engineers reported. But it's not damaging. That makes no sense, another said. It's like the rules don't apply here. Nura walked ahead, her hand stretched toward the gateway. The three shards floated behind her, hovering on a gravity field slowly rotating. Warning, Winter said. We are approaching a singularity created by ancient human technology. Unknown effects may occur. Noted, Cho muttered, his hand resting on his holstered sidearm. Let's assume we're walking into the impossible. Inside the gateway, the team found no walls, no corridors. Just memory. Images flickered around them like holograms painted across space-time itself. They saw stars being seeded, planets constructed, rings of civilization forming across the galaxy. They saw humans not as explorers or soldiers, but as architects. Each scene showed a stage of Project Epoch, an operation that had begun near the end of the old human empire. A desperate attempt to preserve more than just survival. It was a project meant to ensure rebirth, not just of technology, not just of power, but of purpose. The galaxy had feared humanity because it built too quickly, thought too deeply, felt too much. No other species adapted like they did, and that made them dangerous. So the Council conspired to kill them, but they failed. Because humans didn't rely on memory alone. They had seeded their resurrection into the very planets they touched. Mars was the cradle, and at its heart was the final shard. Nura stepped into a circular chamber at the center of the forge. It wasn't made of stone or metal, but of raw memory. Crystalline data formed into solid shapes hovering midair, and at the center hovered the fourth shard, white, glowing, silent. It pulsed once when Nura entered and then floated into her outstretched hand without resistance. As her fingers closed around it, the other three shards flared and suddenly they merged, forming a perfect cube of light and matter. She felt every part of herself unlocked. All her fears, all her doubts, all her ancestors. You are now keeper of the Epoch key, Winter intoned. Humanity's legacy is yours to awaken. Elena and Cho watched as Nura stood in the center of the forge, light swirling around her like fireflies, her body rising several inches above the ground. The cube melted into her palm, leaving no wound, no scar, only knowledge. When she lowered back to the ground, her voice was calm, steady. They built this to give us a second chance, she said. Not to dominate, but to correct what they became. A civilization this powerful, unchecked, was always doomed. So they planted humility in the restart. Cho stepped forward. And what does that mean for us? It means we don't rebuild the old empire, she said. We build something new. Back in orbit, the warships adjusted their formations. Each vessel began transmitting across the galactic grid. The messages weren't threats. They were invitations. An open broadcast echoed across every species' territory. We do not seek revenge. We seek remembrance. We invite those who wish to learn, to speak, to grow. Project Epoch has begun, and the stars are open again. Some worlds answered with silence, some with fear, but others with hope. 1 week later, the first alien envoy arrived at Mars. A delegation from the Rexari, a peaceful insectoid species who had never supported the Council's betrayal, sent their chancellor to speak with Nura. He landed beneath the shadow of the floating gateway and bowed deeply. We feared what you were, he said, but we fear more what we've become without you. Nura offered her hand. Then let's build together. The forge activated. Its systems, once dormant, began spinning, processing, unfolding. Not to create weapons, but to build homes, terraformers, interstellar relays, sentient habitats, blueprints of a future not yet born. Humanity wasn't here to conquer the galaxy. They were here to heal it, to anchor it, to teach it how to remember. Because the greatest weapon humanity ever had wasn't its ships or its artificial intelligence or even its impossible evolution. It was its story. And now the galaxy was ready to listen. The forge pulsed like a heart beneath the red surface of Mars, alive in ways no living thing had ever been. Its energy wrapped around reality, subtly reshaping everything. Atmosphere, radiation, gravity. Not violently, gently, as if it were terraforming not just a world but the very idea of what civilization could be. Within the vast halls of the Epoch core, Nura al-Sharif sat in silent meditation. The four shards had not only awakened the forge, they had changed her. Not physically, she remained flesh and blood, human in every sense. But something deeper had shifted. Her thoughts now stretched beyond the present, beyond even this era. It was as if she could sense the slow hum of the stars, the weight of time pressing down across millennia. It wasn't power she held, it was responsibility, and it was heavy. Outside, the first interstellar diplomat since the collapse stood in cautious wonder. Rixari, Karn, Valari dissidents, even rogue factions of the Durrell Empire had come, unsure whether they were witnessing rebirth or reckoning. The old guard of the Galactic Council had retreated for now, licking their wounds, confused by Earth's restraint. They had expected fire, they had prepared for vengeance. Instead, humanity gave them an invitation, a chance to learn, a chance to listen. But not all were ready to accept it. High above Mars, the verdict of ash detected movement. "Contact!" one of the officers barked. Wraith-class cloaked vessel entering Martian orbit. General Hart was already on her feet. Trajectory? Converging on the forge gate, fast. Cho appeared beside her, eyes narrowing. Assassination? Hart gritted her teeth. Or sabotage? Either way, they're not here to negotiate. She hit the comms. Nura, incoming threat. Get to cover. But Nura's voice replied calmly over the channel. I see them. She stood at the edge of the gateway platform, gazing into the Martian sky as a sleek black starfighter shimmered into visibility above the forge. It was shaped like a dagger, angular and silent. Council technology, old and advanced, coded in stealth arrays from the collapse era. The crowd of alien envoys scattered, shouting and scrambling for shelter. Nura did not move. The starfighter descended rapidly, its energy signature spiking. Inside, a single pilot sat motionless, breathing heavily. His name was Vel Aaron, a council operative trained for only one purpose: to finish what the first betrayal had started, to end humanity. He activated the kill sequence. A gravity imploder was armed beneath his ship. Enough to create a small black hole. Enough to obliterate the forge and anything within 50 kilometers. But before his ship could release its payload, every warship in the human fleet turned at once. 12 ancient giants locked onto him silently. Precisely. The vigilant Winter moved first. It didn't fire a weapon. Instead, it spoke. "You are not the future." In an instant, the Wraith-class fighter was caught in a stasis net, a suspension field designed in the final years before the collapse, capable of freezing molecular movement. The ship stopped moving. Time inside it stopped. Aaron would remain alive, trapped in the same moment of intent forever, a fossil of hatred, a relic of the last war. The forge gates reopened moments later, and the envoys slowly returned, their fears slowly replaced by awe. If humanity had wanted to, they could have destroyed a dozen fleets that day. Instead, they showed restraint. That alone shook the foundations of galactic politics. But Nura knew it wasn't enough to just be merciful. Humanity had to be clear. On the 5th day, Nura stood at the summit of the forge, where the light was brightest, the energy strongest. Broadcast towers grown from the Martian soil by the forge's design now reached into orbit, pulsing with a low harmonic wave that could travel across thousands of light years. Today, Nura would speak not just for Earth, not just for her warships, but for the memory of a species long buried under betrayal and time. She began, "We are human. You tried to forget us. You tried to erase us from your records, from your history, from your minds. You burned our colonies. You shattered our artificial intelligence. You poisoned our skies with viruses and turned our creations against us, and still we returned, because we are not what you made us out to be. We are not vengeance. We are not conquest. We are survivors." She paused, letting the words ripple through the fabric of space. "We have awakened the forge not to rebuild an empire, but to offer a path forward. This technology will not be hoarded. It will be shared. For those who seek war, you will find none here. For those who seek peace, come. Learn, grow with us. But never again will we be forgotten." The response was not immediate. It came over the course of weeks. Tentative messages from neutral systems, curious requests from independent traders, explorers, scholars, even some defectors from the Council itself, all seeking answers, seeking understanding. And humanity gave it to them. Bit by bit, Project Epoch became something greater than a memory. It became a movement. Forge nodes were established on Jupiter's moons, on Earth's orbit, even on Rexari diplomatic stations. Terraforming tools were released to cooperative worlds. An open archive was launched detailing everything known about the collapse and naming those who had orchestrated it. Not out of spite, but for transparency. Truth was the weapon now, and it was sharper than any plasma blade. Inside the vigilant Winter, Cho watched as the galaxy shifted ever so slightly. The Council hadn't retaliated, not yet. But it was weakening. Their propaganda couldn't hold up against footage of human ships saving Rexari colonies from a reactor crisis. They couldn't silence broadcasts of Nura healing a poisoned ocean on the Zarn homeworld using forge-grown microbial colonies. And when a Valeri child orphaned by internal war was adopted into the human-led Mars Accord, everything changed. Because no one feared a warmonger who raised children. They respected a civilization willing to rewrite its legacy. Months passed. The warships remained in orbit, watchers, protectors, reminders of the past. They were rarely used. They didn't need to be. Most of their power was symbolic now, and that made them more dangerous than any weapon. Inside the forge, Nura stood over the final construct, a seed ship designed to carry the story of Earth to the farthest stars. Not to colonize, but to connect. A mobile archive, a traveling embassy, a storyteller. She would not be aboard it. That task would belong to others. She had done her part. Now she turned to Winter one final time. "Are they ready?" she questioned. "Not all," the artificial intelligence replied. "But some are, and more will be. Will we fall again? That depends on what you build and what you teach them to remember." She nodded and walked away from the core. Earth, once categorized as primitive, now led the greatest diplomatic and technological movement in the galaxy, not by dominance, by memory. And across the stars, species spoke of the return not with dread, but with curiosity, with wonder. They told their children, "There was a time the humans disappeared and we thought we were safe. But now they've returned, and we are safer because of it." In the end, humanity's greatest legacy wasn't warships that defied physics. It wasn't the Shard. It wasn't even the Forge. It was the courage to rise from betrayal and choose something better. A civilization that had every reason to hate the galaxy chose to heal it instead, and that changed everything.